Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another tier list video. Last month we ranked iconic comic book moms, so of course this month we're going to be doing iconic comic book dads. Katie has put together
That's right.
our list here.
Yeah, I feel like I want to get out ahead of it. Omni-Man is not on the list. I was instructed specifically not to add him.
Yeah.
Jay and I are currently, or rather, Jay is, I don't know, guiding me through a full read through of Invincible. And as much as I know that he is a bad dad in that he beats the shit out of Mark and then fucks off the planet, I don't know what happens when he comes back or anything. So, for the sake of my own spoiling, Jay has advised we exclude Omni-Man. But Jay, I'm going to remove my headphones real quick. If you want to give just like an immediate, what rank is he?
I think Omni-Man's trying his best. I think that's where I'd put him. I feel like that's probably where a lot of people would put him, which is maybe, a comic booky answer, but
Lovely. I heard none of that, and I feel protected. But Jay, of course, used probably one of our tiers as an example. But to run you through them, we have a beautiful mirror to our mom's tier list with tiers: Super Dad, Adopt Me, Trying His Best, Too Real, Sperm Donor, and Calling CPS.
Yes.
So Jay, I think we just jump in with our first dad. And it's the Bat Dad himself, Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And I've gone for a lot of like civilian identity images on this.
I think that's a good move.
Because like we're looking at their dadness, not their superhero.
I was thinking about Bruce Wayne earlier today because I was like, he was one that I kind of knew was gonna be here, and I was like,
of course,
I think he's gonna be the hardest one for me to rank because I feel like he's a different level dad for the different, people who he's a father figure for. Like, he was not a very good dad, I think, for Dick Grayson and Jason Todd. Like, I think that's, a pretty fair assessment.
And I think there's a really tricky thing with Dick, and I think a little bit Jason as well, in the comics, where as time goes on, it becomes harder and harder for him to be a father figure to them. Because they have so much established lore, and they keep getting, like, pushed up in age as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay,
they're not like Tim, who's eternally 17.
Exactly. No. But yeah, I think that there's a very different story for him with his, firstborn children, and him with Damien, the blood son.
Yeah, I agree, and I think like I think weirdly he's been a better dad to Dick in like the later stuff, like after Dick is after he has to stop being like primarily a father to Dick. I think recently we've gotten better stuff there for him. I think he's a better father for Damien, even if the Batman and Robin series right now is maybe pushing at
not great evidence of that.
Yeah, but yeah, I think he's a flawed father. I think that's pretty straightforward to say. I think anybody who's as mission focused as he is gonna be, a little bit rough there. And I think I think that out of superhero fathers, I think Bruce is one of the few where I do think being a father comes second to being a superhero.
Oh, absolutely.
To him, which you could argue about,
Wayne family tells you.
You could argue about the morality of that, if your first duty is to your kids, or if it's better to be there for people in general. But this is a list about how good of a father they are, and I do think it means you're a worse father. So I think within the realm of superheroes, oh, this is tough. I'm about to you, but I do think that Batman feels very too real to me within the realm of superheroes.
And I see him as a very platonic, like, this is what this looks like of trying his best, where his best just isn't quite good enough. But I think that Too Real makes sense as well.
Yeah, maybe we might adjust once we see where people fall. I'm just I feel like a lot of superhero dads are maybe going to skew better, which is why I was feeling more Too Real. But
right, because they're heroes, so they get to be good dads.
Exactly, and I think that's what the next one here is gonna.
Exactly, we've got Clark Kent here. He is, I think there's very great I think, fear around writing Superman as a bad dad.
Yeah.
Like, he really is framed to be the perfect dad.
Yes.
Like, there is no instance where he's not going to be able to save the world and save his son.
Yeah.
Like, it makes it tricky, because it's like, okay, I suppose that's good dad. But I think that there's a lot of, like, genuineness to it as well. I think within the world of Superman, it makes sense that he's able to be this, like, really good dad as well. And I think that, unlike Batman, family is, like, made such a priority for Superman.
Exactly.
His relationship with Lois is such a priority that it really creates this, like, family unit. So I think it's hard to put him not in Super Dad, but I'm going to actually pitch that we don't.
I
think that he... Wonderful. Tell me why.
I have two slight gripes for Superman, but first I have to point out, not really his fault, but he does miss a lot of the being father to John because of the...
Because he gets lost in space with his grandpa, oops.
Because of that situation. But yeah, I have two reasons. One is because I think compared to some other fathers on this list, I don't think he's really challenged. I don't think he has a lot of tough
Exactly, that's what I was about to say.
And two, John isn't the only person you could consider his kid. And if we're taking Connor into account here, that's gonna change things. Because he kind of dumps Connor with the Kents.
Yeah. Like, all the time. Like, there's not an iteration of Superman who handles Connor well.
No, which is fun, because he didn't choose
to
have, like, he was in a weird way kind of, like, science raped into having...
Exactly. He got kind of Damien'd in.
Yeah.
And frankly, if we're comparing dads who have a surprise child show up for them, shout out to Bruce for winning that matchup.
Yeah, Bruce is actually just worse with the children that he actually chose to take in.
Which, wild. Bruce needs the drama. He needs the mess.
He does.
But I do think that with his primary fathering be to John, I think that he does probably land in an adoption.
I agree.
Like, they are just a perfectly nuclear
No, because he is, like you said, he is, like, almost to a fault of DC, portrayed as this, like, perfect father, so.
Yeah. He even has gay son.
But speaking of which, I think the next character is one who... I'm sorry. I started going into that before you. He does.
But yeah, we have
a character that's very similarly portrayed.
Peter Parker. Yeah. But specifically relevant to me and Jay, this is Ultimate Spider-Man, like 2024 Ultimate Spider-Man Peter Parker.
Had one kid that was killed or abducted by Green Goblin and then never seen again. I'm pretty sure that's a thing.
There's been a thing where, like, it's tough with the spiders because, you know, they fuck around a lot.
Yeah.
Because I think that May has been a thing in the past.
Yeah. But we'll stick to the Ultimate Spider-Man. Yeah. Who I think is the kind of Marvel equivalent of them being scared to portray him as anything but an utterly perfect father. Like, he really, really has he's kind of that father's always so, like, kind of excited for his kids. His relationship with May is really, really sweet. His son, I think, gets a little bit more of, like, especially of recent issues, is getting a little bit more of, like, a three-dimensional relationship with his father, with Peter. But yeah, I think weirdly, as much as, like, we get a lot of family there, we don't get, like, a lot that I think gives you a look at, like, him raising them or anything like that, you know? Yeah,
agreed.
So it's an interesting.
It feels like a lot of that work had, like, already been done.
Exactly.
By the time
because he's already like, we don't get to see him, like, start being a father. He's, like, already established as a father who's been raising his kids, and then we kind of get him as Spider-Man. Yeah. So I think it's a tough one to place, but I also think he's similar to Superman also in the fact that I don't think he's been challenged much as a father. Maybe what's his son's name again? I'm forgetting right now.
Probably Ben.
I don't think it is.
But I don't think it is, actually.
His son becoming Venom is, I think,
may offer some.
Yeah. I think that's like the first real challenge there. So
I think it is important to note that he also was real cringe in Ultimate Spider-Man Incursion.
That's true. I do also. I want to give him credit. something that I think he will set up him apart of a lot of the people on this list. He wastes almost no time in telling his family about his Spider-Manning. I think it's probably about 5 months in. I think is where
he tells his daughter. May finds out on accident.
Yeah, but I think he tells the other. I think in like issue 6. So
I think he tells MJ like right away, doesn't he?
It's a few issues in. It's a few issues.
Okay. Which does definitely get him points.
Yeah, so more. So
where do you want to put Ultimate Spider-Man?
I would put him in Adopt Me above Superman because he doesn't have the Connor factor.
I dig it. I dig it.
Yeah.
All right. But next up we have another Spider-Man character. Jay, how do you feel about Norman Osborn? Dad of the year.
Oh, Norman Osborn.
He's not an iconic father.
No, you can't. But here's the thing. I have not read a lot of Spider-Man comics, which means a lot of my Norman Osborn is informed by other media. And he's a real shite father in most media. I don't know specifically to the comics, but he's a pretty shite father in a lot of media. I do think though he is usually characterized, at least I can't speak to the comics, and this actually might not be true in the comics, but I feel like there's usually more, and even more, he's a shit father sentiment in the comics. I think in a lot of extended media, he's usually portrayed as like this awful person who doesn't have time for certain stuff, but does pretty much deeply care for Harry, and he wants Harry to
and he like does fucked up things, but a lot of times it's because he's trying to like help Harry.
Exactly. So I think he's not the like abandons his son. He's not the I think my son's a complete and utter disappointment and I hate him, but he is still, I think, a shite father.
Yeah, that tracks. That tracks. Do we think he's in sperm donor territory?
Yeah, I think he's that kind of sperm donor who like wants to get involved, but like he's kind of like you find out that he's a criminal and you're like, please stay away from the kid that you
it's like he donated his sperm and then used his resources to track you down and is like, hello, I donated sperm to be your father. Now let me be your dad.
He is that sperm donor who thinks simply being the biological father like earns him a right to be involved in the kid's life. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So sperm donor tier.
Sperm donor.
Now this is one where I don't know that either one of us have a lot, if any, frame of reference. But I didn't want to ask you because we keep the list a little on wraps.
Yeah.
This is Scott Lang. This is Ant-Man. He popped up a lot in conversations about dads in comics.
That's fair. I have the MCU, side of it.
That's better than me. Let's use that as our jumping off point then.
I quite like his relationship with his daughter in the MCU. Like, you do have to take some points away because he goes to jail for being a criminal and like misses a decent chunk of his daughter's life. So like,
that is tough.
Give points away from that. But then he comes back.
Barry Allen's dad defense, is he actually a criminal?
Yes,
or is it not his fault?
He's fully just a thief.
Good to know. I have not seen
MCU.
any movie he is in.
Don't know how true this is to the comics. But MCU, he's just fully a thief. But then once he comes back, a lot of his like journey and character and why he becomes a superhero is that he's trying to like get to be a part of his daughter's life, and he wants to be a good role model for her, and he cares very deeply about his daughter to the point that he like takes a deal to be under house arrest instead of going back to jail so that he can continue to see his daughter. Like, there's a lot of really good stuff, I think, in at least the MCU version, for him being there for his daughter, for him caring very deeply about his daughter and about his relationship with his daughter. And he even ends up having a pretty decent relationship with his ex-wife and her new husband. So that, so I think that's another like positive dad.
Love that for him. I feel like that's giving trying his best.
Yeah, I think he's a trying his best type dad. He's missed a decent chunk, but he's doing his best now.
He's doing his best, and we love to see it. What we don't love to see is fathers who get their kids killed. Next up is Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, the Terminator. Father of 3, resented by all of them. It's a bad sign when the kids don't like the dad.
Yeah.
I feel like he's a villain, right? Like he is a villain. There are little glimmers every so often where he takes that kind of like pride in his children, where it's like, yes, I am
never Jericho though.
never Jericho. Yeah, he has had these moments where he like takes them under his wing, and it's in like a bad and villainous way.
Yeah.
But there is like a little bit of dad happening there. But is it good dad?
I think Slade brings a whole new meaning to calling CPS.
Yeah. Look, we're not counting Tara as a surrogate daughter.
Yeah, we had a lot going on there. He's just an awful father in about every conceivable way.
Yeah. Yeah. Now another one that, you know, Slade pretty cut and dry. But you know, a bit more complicated here. We have Trigon the Demon, father of Raven. Look, the list is iconic comic book fathers, not good comic book fathers.
I haven't even like caught out of the side of my eye before it became the main one we were talking about. And I just looked at it, I was like, oh my god, that's Trigon. Yeah.
That's Trigon.
Trigon's an awful father. He basically just wants to use Raven as like a link to the mortal world so that he can come and conquer. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like even below Slade.
Yeah, you know, they're both sexual predators too. So, you know, like that's
there you go.
You know, something that they share.
It's good that CPS is being contacted. All right, but now we go a little bit more into the light. This is one that I'm hoping you have a little more experience with. I know at the very least that you're a big fan of Logan the movie.
Yeah.
And we have just read the Laura Kinney Wolverine duo of issues that focuses on imaginary Logan being her father.
Yeah, so we're gonna. I'll take this from two fronts. I'll talk about the Logan movie in a second because I think that's my greatest experience with them directly as a relationship. But I feel like I need to give a quick shout to the fact that I've read a decent amount of Wolverine comics that have come out over the last like 20 years since X-23 has existed, and she has played next to no role in the vast majority, if not all of them, which is maybe a point against him that his daughter is so uninvolved in a lot of his life.
Yeah.
That being said, we get our third example of you know, essentially an unwanted child that was created without the consent of the parent in a very, very similar way to Superman in this case. But I'm gonna go to the Logan movie because that's my greatest context for this. And that's a good old, you know, not really reluctant is even the right word. Just fully against taking in the child and helping the child, but forced into it and ending up actually being a really good father figure, kind of against their own will, which is a trope that I love, and I think one that sums up Wolverine's personality very well. Of like, you're somehow going to be really good at this, despite the fact that you want no business with this. But yeah, I think Wolverine just strikes me as a guy who's like, he's not going to be a good father in the sense of he's not going to like take you out to play ball or anything like that. But he, I think, is the kind of father that will like go through hell to, you know, save his kids or to help his kid. I say kids because I think Laura Kinney Wolverine implied that he has another.
He has another daughter, and I believe he also has a son.
So he's actually got a lot of kids that have not been very relevant in his comics, which is, you know, questionable. But I certainly don't think he should be in the very bottom bits of this list. I feel like Wolverine is the kind of guy who I think in general is trying his best sums up him, I think, as a character and not just as a father.
That's so fair. That's so fair.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of context for the comic book relationship outside of the not even real Wolverine that we saw in Laura Kinney. So, unless you have other feelings, I don't know if you've
no.
X-23
I mean, I feel like he gives too real in that he like isn't super. The fact that his children are so like unknown is, you know, it's not like a Wolverine family happening. I don't think
that he's. I do think out of the two, I think Scott is substantially better. So maybe.
Yeah. I am happy to leave him there.
Okay, we'll leave him there for now.
But now we have someone who much more familiar with. We've got Oliver Queen, baby.
This is a tough one.
because I feel like in recent years there's been a much bigger shift for him to be put into like a fatherly role.
It's weird.
Like obviously he's always had
he's
Connor.
another one
Not
I think
always
that
had
like
Connor, but
is dependent on the kid. Like I think he's been pretty consistently portrayed as a very poor father to Roy. Like
yeah,
you know, modern context is you know, we see in World's Finest Teen Titans, he's just not there. If you go back even to like the 70s, and he was written not as like not there, but just as completely unaware of what's going on in Roy's life at all times, to the point that, you know, Roy becomes a drug addict without Oliver realizing it, and then Oliver kind of loses his shit on him, and like that's not really great.
The best response.
Yeah, so that's the relationship I'm most familiar with, so like that might color this a bit. I think he's usually portrayed as a much better father to Connor, especially in recent years. I think he's usually portrayed as being a pretty good father to Connor, so that's a, you know, different side of it. But the Roy relationship, I think, colors it
it's really predominant. It's really predominant. Yeah, in a way where like Clark's primary son is John, and then Connor's kind of like also there. Yeah. It feels like Ollie's primary son is Roy.
Yeah.
And then Connor's also
it's the same thing with like with Bruce, where it's like at least now it's prominently Damien. Even before it was like prominently Dick. And Jason was always like, despite being the one that was treated the worst, is like he's not the main one that we focus on. Roy is the main one that we focus on, despite him being the very poorly treated one.
Yeah. I do feel like they have kind of a too real vibe, though.
I think so,
like,
too.
I think that a lot of it comes down to, and this is a little bit of a reflection on Ollie when you consider how long Roy was like a teen or very young man.
Yeah.
A lot of it comes so much down to like personality clash with them.
Yeah. I mean,
they're both big personalities.
Yeah. There's a decent amount of negligence though from Oliver.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
But that's how you end up with the.
I think we're going to talk about the kind of the interesting side of that now, as Roy, who was, you know, maybe didn't have the best father figure here. Now we get to talk about him as a father figure.
Yeah.
And
father of Leanne.
Yeah, haven't read a ton with him and Leanne, but I've read a bit, and I have the Young Justice coloring as well. And from everything that I've seen and read and heard of, I really, really like Roy as a father to Leanne.
Absolutely.
It is such a complicated situation with Cheshire and everything, and yet he still seems to find a way to be the absolute best father that he can. Like, he is somehow the much, much better parent of the pair, which is not what you'd really expect from Roy.
It's like, oh no, I guess if you slept with Cheshire, that is probably going to be true, though.
And I feel like he has that, like, he's that trope of, like, parent who fights with kid, like, on him. Like, I feel like there's so many, like, iconic comic book moments, and Young Justice of him, like, having Leanne in a sling or something as he's fighting, which is maybe a poor father, you know, thing, if you think about it, like, legitimately. But in comic book world, there's no chance he's letting anything happen to Leanne, so we're cool with it. I really,
and I think
like
something
Roy.
that I love about Roy as a dad is it feels like it's often a thing that he's dealing with.
Yeah.
Like, I know that for a while Leanne was, like, kind of erased. I think that might have...
Not erased.
I think she might have been erased in... Oh, right! Yes!
That's the whole Prometheus, Oliver Queen finally murders somebody situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, she's gone for a while, but I feel like it's something that comes up with Roy a lot. And that, I feel is, like, kind of on the opposite side of that Logan thing, where it's like, it feels good that so much of his identity is being a dad.
And I think it's the opposite of Batman, too, where I think Roy is maybe the most exemplary. Like, I think Roy would let the world burn to save his kid. You know, like, I think Roy is family. My kid is so much more important than anything else. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, we even get that great Joshua Williamson moment of where he's, like, reunited with Leanne. And it's like, it just feels so good because of how much Roy cares about his daughter.
Yes.
So I like.
But so I guess it begs the question: where does he land? Because, like, I feel like he is very much on the surface like a trying his best dad.
Yeah.
Because like that's so much of what is happening with him.
Yeah.
But because of like the circumstances, capital T, capital C.
But I feel like if you knew what Roy's willing to do for you, I feel like you'd be like, I'd want him to adopt me. I feel like
exactly. That's what I was saying. I was like the circumstances limit his like I don't know, ability to be a good normal dad, but I feel like everything he shows is always him being an amazing dad.
I agree. And he doesn't have a Connor. I feel like at the very least he has to be above Superman for not having a kid that he's completely abandoned.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, but we're jumping back into Katie unknown territory. We're jumping back to The Walking Dead. We went through a little rapid fire round with the moms where I did in fact forget Andrea, who knew an important mom.
Arguably the most iconic.
Look, the internet lied to me. They were all tainted by the TV show. I'm like, put Michonne in.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Because now I've listened to Jay instead. So we are starting off our little Walking Dead duology with Hershel. I believe Maggie's dad?
Well, yes, Maggie's dad also has like 7 kids in the comic book. A ton of kids. Only 2. I think Billy's the other kid. I think is the other really important kid.
Oh, right, because they're on the farm.
Yeah. Only 2 are really important for like a large chunk of the book. But he has like 7 kids. Several are already dead by the time our characters get there. Yeah. But his role as a father and as a patriarch is very, very important to the comic series. But before I get into my thoughts here, Katie probably isn't going to chime in too much because she hasn't read much of the comic.
No. Now that I've remembered who he is, we did read The Farm.
So, but before we get that, I feel the need to disclaimer for people. Talking about the comic book, not the show here. He is a much, much better father in the show than he is in the comic book. I don't think he's necessarily a bad father in the comic book, but I think there's a lot more joke groping there. In the show, he becomes just this phenomenal father, immediately a father figure for like everybody, and that's the show. It's a different thing. So that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about comic book Hershel. And comic book Hershel spends most of his time either depressed or making choices that put his kids in like a lot of danger.
Yeah, I remember when we were talking about that volume, I was talking about Hershel quite a bit because I think that one of the things that volume does is it frames Rick as like absolutely correct. Yeah. Like Rick is just right. Yeah. And that's like fine, that's a choice, whatever. But it does mean that Hershel is just objectively wrong, endangering everyone, and it gets like 2 of his own kids killed plus like a little girl, right? Isn't that when that happens?
Yeah, I don't think there's a little girl who dies in the comic unless I'm
Didn't someone like wander into the barn full of zombies?
Not really. They open up the barn. I don't think a little girl dies. Unless I'm
fair enough
misremembering something.
This is a while back in my memory.
His kids were already.
In any case, his kids are already gets a couple of his own kids killed.
No, his kids are already dead in the barn. I think he might have 1 that dies there. He then has 2 that die at the 3 and a lot of his kids die in very quick succession.
But like the farm stuff is very much like on him.
Yes, agreed.
Like he's the one insisting that they're holding on to these zombies. He's the one.
No, I will say partially that is due to his love of his children that are still zombies in said barn.
That doesn't make you a good dad.
He wasn't in my hot opinion, them, even though they were already undead. I don't know how you feel.
I'm sure that Rick offered.
He wasn't willing to let anybody kill them, even though they were undead. He wanted that. He thought that they could be cured.
Hey, Dad, my beloved father. I know you don't watch this. If I turn into a zombie, you have my blessing and I don't know, a desperate plea for you to kill me.
Yeah, I think once they're at the prison, he gets a few good beats with Maggie and Glenn. His stuff with Glenn, I think, is not great in the farm. He's a very rough religious man at that point. So, and I think at that point he does some bad things, right? So I think he has a lot of rough moments. But I will say I still do think a lot of him as a character, especially in the comics, is wrapped up about his like care of his kids and his family. So at least he's got that going for him. It is his main focus, even though he goes about it wrong, and a lot of times that leads to poor things. But I certainly don't think he's a great father.
Are we thinking too real or bottom of trying his best?
I'm thinking too real. He feels like a very realistic portrayal of like trying to be a father in the zombie apocalypse.
Top or below Bruce? I feel like he can go above Ollie.
Yeah, because I don't think he's quite as bad as Ollie is. But
but opposite side of the coin.
Yeah.
We kind of flipped the script on this tier list. I started off with Aunt May and Ma Kent.
Yeah.
On the moms. And we left some of the best for last here on this one, starting with the one and only Rick Grimes.
He's the greatest father.
Go on, I'm sure you have a tie, Rick.
He's the greatest father in the history of comic books. Like, he is the comic book dad to me. The Walking Dead is at its core a father-son story that he is the father in, and he is just such a good father. Despite, like, some stumbles, some mistakes, he is, like, that character who, one, puts his kid above all else. Like, that he does not have the Batman issue. He is going to do whatever it takes for his kid. And two, even beyond Carl, he kind of, as the book goes on, takes on a father role to, like, the group and to people who he comes into, and he starts, being the father and taking care of all of his people. And I think that goes for this father too. And I think, like, the best way to sum it up is, this is a man who found himself in a zombie apocalypse that he did not think, was a good environment for his son, and decided he was going to do whatever it took to protect his son. And then very quickly decided, you know what? Actually, I can't just protect my son in the zombie apocalypse. I have to rebuild society so that there is a society for my son to grow up in. Like, that is such crazy dadness to be like, I am going to fix the world so that my son can live in the world. I love Rick Grimes. He is a phenomenal father.
I know, buddy.
I
chose a volume 1 shot of him because I like when he wears the hat.
Yeah, he gives the hat to Carl. After that.
Which, super dad. You have a cool hat and you let your son have it.
Yeah. That's the hardest thing he's ever done. Never mind all of the horrific things he did to protect his son. Giving up the hat.
He gave up his hat.
Yeah, that's a tough.
And that's commendable. All right, but we have yet another iconic figure. We have Uncle Ben here. And I feel like I have a little bit of a hot take with Uncle Ben.
This is wild. So you threw in one origin story, dad here. I'm shocked that Thomas Wayne isn't on here based on that.
Why the fuck would Thomas Wayne be here? Thomas Wayne doesn't do shit, and that's kind of my thing with Uncle Ben as well. He constantly
does shit. He is always brought back as Flashpoint Batman now.
Look, I love Flashpoint Batman. But he's not doing shit as a dad.
Yes, they always make him interact with Bruce now through shenanigans and bullshit.
Look, the letter from Flashpoint makes me weep.
That's true.
That's just, like, gonna happen. Yeah. The rest of it, I don't believe it.
I agree.
The Flashpoint universe, the whole point of it was that it was erased.
Yeah. So if
you bring Flashpoint universes back, I ignore it
constantly. But so Uncle
Ben,
I
ignore them.
I assume we're talking about the main universe here because
I used
we've got the OG Ultimate Universe Uncle Ben, who I think is we read that volume.
We did read that volume, and I thought he was a little weird to Aunt May. Like, everyone was really mean to Aunt May.
We're talking about the father figure though, and he was very good to Peter in that volume.
That's fair.
Talk to me about main Uncle Ben and your hot take here.
He is important, obviously.
Yeah.
He's got the line.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know, man. I feel like if the most important thing your character does is die.
He got fridged, man.
He got fridged. He got not as badly as Thomas Wayne, who not only got fridged, he got chilled. But was that something? Yeah, I feel like if we're looking at, like, influential figures, obviously the influence of Uncle Ben is felt throughout time.
Yeah.
But I feel like he doesn't get to do much because he's dead.
That's
a lot of for most of the time.
Accurate, yeah, that's fair.
So, like, he did good.
He was a good dad, but
But now he's not because he's a dead
He's in the
dad.
ground.
He's on the ground. So I think he's perhaps one of the trickiest ones to rate. Because I don't think he gets the chance to be a super dad.
No.
The way that Aunt May gets to be a super mom.
He did adopt Peter, though, so you know.
There you go. Do we want to put him in the adopt me tier? I feel like
I don't know, trying his best. I mean, if we're sticking to the letter of like the literal words, I feel like he can't be trying his best because he's dead. He's not trying anything anymore.
He tried his best.
Too real actually kind of works from a word sense because it's pretty
There
real for your father to die.
No. Yeah. Happy Father's Day.
So, like, based on the letter of the words, I feel like either adopt me or too real. But if we're going more on the vibes of the tiers, I feel like trying his best makes a lot of sense.
I feel like even with the like, I don't want him to adopt me. He's dead.
That's fair.
I like trying his best for Uncle Ben because he did the best he could with the time he had. Yeah,
I would say he should at least go
he did the best he could with the time he had, but unfortunately, he did not have all that much time.
Decent amount of time, you know. He got to be a dad for 14. How old is Peter when he becomes Spider-Man? 14 or 15?
I'm sure it changes all the time.
So you know, and he was old, you know. So
he was old. We've got a dad who sometimes he's dead and sometimes isn't. We've got Pa Kent. We've got Jonathan Kent.
Oh my, that's a what? Where did you grab Pa Kent from?
Okay, here's the thing. I hate the art of Jonathan Kent, where he looks like a frail old man.
So you chose like a weird Chad image of him?
Yes. This might be from I don't think it's from Superman for All Seasons, but I believe it is Frank Quitely art.
Yeah, I had that thought. I'm like, is that him from All Seasons? But no, okay.
Because it might be him from one of the early issues of All Seasons.
Okay.
So yeah, he gets to direct things a lot more often than Uncle Ben does.
I feel like Pa Kent has had very inconsistent characterization.
I agree with that 100%.
Like, I feel like we've seen him everywhere from, like, being the you've gotta, like, pace yourself, you know, Clark, you maybe don't want to be Superman, to, like, you have this responsibility to be Superman. Like, he's been all over the place. I feel like we said that with Ma Kent, too, where I do actually, like, I give you more points for Connor, because they are such good parents to Connor.
They're such good parents to Connor.
But yeah, with Clark, he's kind of all over the place, honestly. His characterization changes a lot, as does his status as alive or dead. So he's a tough one for me to rank. How do you feel, Katie?
I think that he, much like Martha Kent, gets a lot of credit because they have what I think Superman is missing, which is the obvious challenges that come with raising an alien.
That's true.
Like, we so often get to see that type of thing happen.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things about Jonathan Kent, now that John Kent comes in and makes it all confusing.
Character.
Yeah.
They need to stop naming everybody after other characters in comics, because it makes it so much.
It makes it so hard.
More difficult.
But what I think makes him really stand out is how often he's like just normal dad to Clark. Like, obviously he has to deal with like Clark alien stuff, but I feel like more than anything else, when I think of Jonathan Kent, I think of like, Clark, will you lift the tractor so I can tinker with the engine?
Yeah.
And I think that is like so beautiful for being a father, right? Like, he's not a caretaker for Clark.
No.
Like, he's not like a I don't know, scientist prodding at him. He's like, this is my son. My son can lift a tractor. And that's just how he is. So I love Jonathan Kent.
That's fair.
I think he's a great boy.
He is dead though at a lot of times.
He is dead in a lot of them.
Yeah.
But he's also not dead. Currently. And often. I feel like he stays alive quite often.
He was dead for a while there. He's not dead right now, though, I don't think.
That's fair.
I'm pretty sure he's not dead right now. I would bet that with a 95% chance.
I personally think that much like Martha Kent, he deserves a super dad tier.
We can give him super dad tier.
Like, it's hard to have raised Superman and not be
the image that you chose makes me want him there less. But
I like when he looks strong. So often
it's
people
not
draw
him. He looks like he has like a fake spray tan and like his jawline makes me uncomfortable.
I think he looks dashing.
He looks like he's at plastic.
Anyway, speaking of hot dads, next up on the list is Master Splinter.
Whoa, another dad who has had such varying characterization across.
And another dad who's currently dead.
That depends on the iteration you were talking about. But yes, he is currently dead.
That's fair.
Yeah,
main continuity. Yeah. Currently dead.
But yeah, he is one who's had such varying personalities and roles to the Turtles, which makes him a tough one to rank. IDW Splinter is one of my all-time favorite comic book dads. He has such an amazing arc. He makes mistakes. He's prone to anger. He pushes away his kids at one point, but he's always kind of there for them. He still cares about them a lot. There's really good stuff there. I will say, I think fairly consistently across the majority of adaptations, he has his fatal flaw of like being a ninja and sensei sometimes too much instead of a father when his kids need a father, and that can definitely be an issue. In the original Mirage comics, he very much has just turned his children into like a band of murdering little ninja soldiers for him, which is debatably,
a vibe.
Debatable father practices. And then, like I said, in IDW, he pushes them away at one point, which I think is something that you have to take into account. I love him so much, and I think he's a really good father. But he has, I think, very noticeable and like very plot significant flaws that need to be considered. But he does adopt them. So I might go with a adopt me on this one.
And if you get adopted by him, you get to become a ninja.
Yeah, that's very fun. And he gives
he gives
you cool weapons and ninja masks. I would put him.
And buys below. So much pizza.
I'm gonna put him below Roy. I think.
I love it. I dig it.
I think he has to go above Super, because again, he doesn't have a Connor. Only Superman has a Connor, which is hurting him in that tier.
It is. Which is a bummer, because like it's not his fault.
No, but
it's not his fault. It is his responsibility.
Yeah.
And we come to our final father.
Yes.
We come to Alfred Pennyworth, who I think, as Batman has, like, as Bruce has been given less and less room to be a father to the Robins, I feel like Alfred has slotted into that a lot. Like, he starts to get a lot of the light.
I don't know that he feels like their father a lot of the time. I think he is firmly their grandfather. Like he is
That's fair.
Giving them the like pats on the back support when their father's maybe not there for them. I think he's Batman's father. Like that is where
That's very fair. Very fair.
Yeah.
That is his primary use on this list, is as Bruce's father.
That's what I want to like get it, because I think that's where his list status should mainly revolve around.
So where do you put someone who lets their son dress up as a bat and fight crime?
Does he let him, or does he do everything in his power to make sure that he doesn't die while on his suicide mission?
No, I'm fully joking, because spoiler alert, I think Alfred falls into super dad. So if you have like, oh, okay, I was gonna say if you have anything to go against that,
he is a butler who decides to raise his like employer's kid when he has nobody else. Despite being a wildly wealthy man, still acts as butler so that he can continue to be a father role in a man who is deeply emotionally stunted and needs said father. He is always there for
the like air of this is my butler, not my dad, so that he can deal with having a father figure.
Exactly. And like he's just always there for Bruce. He knows how to talk to Bruce in a way that I don't think anybody else really does, where like again, like he lets Bruce keep up a lot of pretenses when they talk. Like I think that's what makes really well written Bruce and Alfred dialogue so interesting, because a lot of it comes through like mission talk and butler talk, but he is still being a father. He's the one who patches him up. He's the one who makes sure that Bruce acts as a father sometimes to the Robins, where he's like, you have this ward, you need to be there, that is your kid. So I just think he does so much, and I think Bruce, not already 20 years into his career. I don't think Bruce is technically 20 years into his career right now, because bullshit. But a not very experienced Bruce / Batman without Alfred, I think is a scary thought to dream into the world.
Oh yeah, and that Madman Scott Snyder did it.
Well, that's what I was saying. He's already, I think I don't know, because there's so many retcons. Like I know in New 52 he had only been Batman for like 5 years, but I don't know.
I was talking about Absolute Batman.
Oh, I'm
because I believe it was actually it might have been Tynion who killed.
Yeah, it was
killed Alfred.
But they were working, like in concert.
Yeah, so this is our tier list. Do we have any adjustments we want to make?
Part of me thinks maybe...
I think Logan might be a little too high.
Yeah, I could see that. Honestly, he's a lot like Bruce, I think, in his dad status.
And I think what faults me with him is that, like, a lot of what Bruce does is deal with his children.
Yeah.
So, like, in terms of, like, screen time. Like, when you think of Batman, many people will think of, the Batman family.
Yeah.
Whereas with Wolverine, it's mostly a solo act.
Yeah. I think we can drop him for sure.
Do you mind dropping him below Batman?
Drop him below Batman. Yeah.
So part of me wants Bruce to move up one.
I don't know, man.
But I do think that he fits in the Too Real category pretty well.
Because I think he's one of those, like, I think he's a slightly poor father, but I don't think it's intentional, which is what the Too Real category feels like. It's kind of
it doesn't feel like there are circumstances outside of his control making him a worse dad.
Yeah.
It feels like the circumstances within his control that he has set himself up with.
Yeah.
Like, the man has not gone to therapy, and therefore he is a worse dad.
Yeah. And, like, also, I mean, I can literally call this, like, he has favorites in a very, I think, not okay way.
Yeah.
But
then again, if you're listening, Dad, we all know.
No, but, like, to an absurd, like, this is, like, I think my favorite thing is always, was ready to kill when he thought Dick was killed, was not ready to kill when Jason actually died. So...
Yeah. When Jason was, like, outright murdered.
Beaten to a pulp,
in an
blown
explosion.
Up. Yeah.
Dick was strapped to, like, a doomsday machine.
Yeah.
And was killed so that the world wouldn't explode.
Yeah. The circumstances are so... And yet, only willing to kill for one of those, so...
But you know what? I support him playing favorites. I do with the Robins, too.
But yeah, I like the list where it's at.
Me too. Do you wanna run through? You wanna start with Superdad?
Yeah, we'll start with Superdad. We have, of course, the great Rick Grimes at the top of the list, best of the best. We then have Alfred Pennyworth right below him, and we have Chad Pa Kent rounding out the top tier.
It's not my fault. The Superman for All Seasons got so popular after James Gunn cited it for the Superman movie that now every time you Google anything about the Kents, it's just Superman for All Seasons art. And I hate it. But anyway, Adopt Me tier, we have specifically the brand new Ultimate... Not brand new, it's like 2 years old. The new Ultimate Universe, Peter Parker. We also have Roy Harper, father of Leanne. We have Master Splinter of the Ninja Turtles, and we have Clark Kent, the Superman himself.
That's right, and in trying his best, we have what I'm sure is going to be a controversial pick in Uncle Ben, and we have Scott Lang.
Yeah. Then down in Too Real, we've got our hotties with an attitude problem and Herschel. um, we've got Bruce Wayne, Logan the Wolverine, Herschel from The Walking Dead, and Oliver Queen the Green Arrow.
In Sperm Donor, we actually only have Norman Osborn. Shockingly.
Yeah. Shockingly. And then down in CPS, we've got the Dirty Duo. We've got Deathstroke and Trigon. Do you agree with our tier list? Are you angry that we forgot to put anyone on it? If you are, just keep in mind, we don't know jack shit about Marvel. Yeah. We tried to rank Sue Storm and I think Jean Grey, and we were like, we don't know what to do with them.
Yeah. But recommend more people in case we want to do a part 2 next year.
Yes.
And please also recommend other things you'd like to see us rank in a tier list. We're always open to any and all suggestions.
Absolutely.
But otherwise,
we have more content on the channel. We've got our regularly scheduled episodes every single Wednesday and bonus content every single weekend. So you're never left without a script here. Yeah.
So subscribe if you want to stay tuned for all of our, new uploads coming. We got some big interview guests coming up in the near future, so you're going to want to subscribe if you don't want to miss those interviews. And as always, we hope to see you next week. Comic Geeks.